Good morning, everyone. I'm taping. This is Jeff Scott welcoming you to day 14 of the Rankin Technical College Summer 2023 online AWD 1100 C# programming class. Earlier today, about a half an hour or so ago, I emailed you chapters 7 and 8 pretest. All right, we're going to go over the pretest instructions right now. And then you'll have from approximately 8:15 a.m. till 10 a.m. to work on the pretest. And it's challenging. It really is. You may have to go in and take a look at some of the array methods that we have not even talked about yet in order to do this test in the best way possible. All right, so at 10 o'clock, I will go through the pretest from scratch. So I'll build the whole thing. Tomorrow morning or tomorrow will work very much like today, except instead of the pretest by 7 a.m. tomorrow, I will email you hands-on test number 3 or hot number 3. I should mention again, because some of you seem to not know this, but you don't have to turn in the pretest. You don't even have to do it if you don't want to. All right. I'm just setting it up for you and then going over it because I'm thinking that it'll help you take the actual test. I think, and I could be wrong, that the pretest today is going to actually be harder than the regular test tomorrow. We'll see. So again, hands-on test 3 or hot number 3 will be emailed to you by 7 a.m. tomorrow. And just like today, we'll go over the test instructions from 8 a.m. until 8:15 a.m. I'll be online. Literally, I'll be online checking the computer every 10 or 15 minutes, but I'll be online tomorrow, I'd say through about 9 o'clock. All right. And next week, as mentioned, we will go over chapters 9, 10, and 11 of the Muroc text. Right. I didn't do turned in the chapter 4 through 6 written tests or homework. There were no labs. So Jeff, why don't you get that out of there? I don't know. There were no labs for 4 through 6, but those were due last Sunday. All right. The chapters 7 and 8 written tests, homework, and lab 2 are due by midnight this Sunday, the 11th. Now, one of the things that I promised I would do was to go over and see if I could fix the problem I had yesterday with the array one that we were going over yesterday. So I will forgot to look at it, but I will look at it while you are taking the test right here. And if I can figure out what the problem was, I'll let you know. All right. So again, I will be online today, but I think I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the tape around 8:15. So there's not just, like there has been maybe an hour and 45 minutes of dead air. I think that's kind of a waste of everything. Then I'll start up another tape at 10 o'clock. So let's take a quick look at the pretest itself. As it says, this is challenging. You will be asked tomorrow, as you have been all the time, to set the tab order, the accept button, the cancel button, the start position. All right. Change the name of the form and the form text. Now, this is a little bit new, but create a program prologue. How do you do that? Geez, all you have to do is basically copy everything that's in here. All right. That's what I'm going to do today. Now, I know how this works. If I don't make it worth some points, you probably won't do it. So we'll see. I probably won't make it worth any points, but this will be worth some points tomorrow, as will this. The reason I'd like you to create a program prologue is what you're starting to do is you're starting to create some what is referred to as internal documentation. All right, good morning. I'm just starting to go over the pretest that I emailed to everybody this morning. So again, there's only one problem on here that you have to do. You're going to get from 8:15 until 10 o'clock a.m. to work on it. At 10 o'clock, I'm going to start up with a spanking brand new project, and I'm going to create it before your very eyes, so to speak. Tomorrow, when you take the test, there will be points given for setting the tab order, setting the accept button, setting the cancel button, setting the start position, changing the name of the form, and changing the form text. I may also, I don't know yet, but give you a point or two for doing the program prologue. And for that prologue, basically all you have to do is up near the top of your program, just copy the test instructions like that and just plop them in as a comment. That's what I'm going to do in a little bit, at 10 o'clock when we go over it. All right. Now, for the program, I changed this around a little bit because I wanted you to have to do some of the stuff that was in chapters 7 and 8. So normally, an employee ID field like this would be a string. All right. Usually, when you are creating a program, any value that you make a numeric value is, the ones that you're going to make a numeric value are going to be values that you could conceivably use in calculations. But I mean, no one's ever going to say, hey, what's the square root of your employee ID? That would be kind of stupid. All right. Or, hey, if I add my employee ID to yours, what number do we get? You're not going to do something like that. So typically, I would make the employee ID a string as opposed to an integer. I'm asking that you make them integers. All right. Just so you can use some of the methods that are shown in chapter 7. Also, I'm going to ask that you use constants and make a constant int for min employee ID and set that equal to 1,000, and make another constant for max employee ID and set it to 99.99. All right. That again is so that you can use the is within range that was mentioned in chapter 7. I am going to put in here on the test, and it will be worth some points, that you are to the point now in your C# careers where you should be able to modularize your program. All right. So, again, I don't want you to put everything under buttons. Okay. So when we look at this right here, this is the interface that you're going to build. It's not a difficult interface. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 labels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 text boxes, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buttons. All right. So, in other words, I guess I should have left it up there, but I don't want you to put a lot of code under any button. All right. Rather, I want you to call modules from there, one or more modules. All right. So, for the problem 1, which is the only one I'm going to ask you to do, use the data validation that's shown in your textbook around page 219. So if you look on that page, get back here, 219, there's an is present. There is an is decimal. Well, we're not going to use is decimal, but you can change it to is int 32. And all you'll have to do is change that to is int 32 there and make that int 32 right here. And you can use that one. So you will use the is present. All right, you will use that for all of the inputs. So what do I mean? You want to make sure that there is an ID, that the ID is present, that the first name is present, that the last name is present, and that the department name is present. All right. The only one that you'll have to do the numeric things for to check for is in 32 or is within range is the employee ID. All right. So like I said, it's around page 219 in the book, and they have a little bit of talk before it and after. the way they did it in the book as far as using that is valid data and stuff that's in there. I didn't do it like that. I will show you everything I did starting at 10 o'clock. This is not a short program. All right, you've been told. Now, that said, mine's probably around 300 lines, but I've got comments in there and I did a lot of spacing of stuff out so it would hopefully make more sense. All right, so you will need an is present method, an is in 32 method, and an is within range method. All right, in order to be able to use those, you'll want to set that tag property that I mentioned in class. If you either don't understand that or can't get it to work, again, I will show you exactly what I mean at 10 o'clock. Now, note the note on the bottom of page 1 here. We will only do number 1 in class together. You should be able to do number 2 and or number 3 as shown later here tomorrow. We'll talk about that in just a moment. All right. So you're writing a GUI application. I will tell you there'll be 2 problems on this test tomorrow. They'll both be GUI. You won't have to write anything tomorrow that's console. All right. So first in here, write a GUI app that looks up employee information by ID, and that actually should say by ID, comma, first name, comma, last name, comma, or department. Sorry. So that's what it should say. The program must store this information in 4 parallel arrays. And if you're like, what the heck is a parallel array? You will create 4 different arrays. One that I called IDs, and it had these 10 values in it. It was an integer array. And then 3 string arrays. One that I called first names that has these 10 values. Another called last names that had these 10 values. And another called departments that had these 10 values. All right. So in other words, if I went and grabbed element 0, the first one from each array, I'd have this. I'd have 1347 Scott Gray Information Technology. All right. So as it says, the app should include those arrays. All right. So there's not a heck of a lot of instructions that I gave in here, but I gave you some program runs. So rather than show them here, I'm going to run the program for you, my copy of it, and show you what I'm expecting you to do. All right, so here it is. If you put in nothing and you click search by ID, notice what happens. It says error, employee ID is a required field. What did that do? That called the is present method, taken virtually almost exactly from the text, all right, and then changed it to add, may put employee ID in there. If I don't have a first name, I get error, first name is a required field. If I try last name, all right, error, last name is a required field, and you probably guessed already. Now it says department is a required field. So for each one of these, all right, if I come back again in there, let me stop the run. All right, if you look here, this is the employee ID. I'm going to move this way over so you can see this. All right, so for the employee ID right here, I went down to the tag and I put a tag in of employee ID. For the first name, there's a tag of first name. For the last name, there's a tag of last name. For the department, there's a tag of department. All right, I did that so I would be able to use those routines that I mentioned to you. All right, now, close this thing. I don't think I need this, so let me try that again. All right, now, if I put an ID in, the ID must be between 1000, 1000, and 9999, 900. What if I put in junk and I click this? Then it gives me an error and it says employee ID must be a valid integer value. That called the isInt32 to make sure that that worked. All right. What if I do that and I put in a number that's less than 1,000, like 1? Then it says employee ID must be between 1,000 and 9,999. I got that. I got that from calling the is within range function. And the min was set to 1,000 and the max was set to 9,999. In the same way, if I put in something that's too big, I get the same message. All right. Now, if I put in something that's not there, I don't have a 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I put that in, that's a valid ID number, but there is no employee that meets that criteria. So since there isn't, we just put the word error in all of these. On the other hand, if we put in 1347, which is a valid ID, and we search by ID, then notice what happens. We get the ID, the first name, the last name, and the department get filled in. All right. Now, I already showed you the only things you have to check for these three fields is an is present. So for the ID field, you must do is present, you must do isn't 32, and you must do an is within range. For the first name, the last name, and the department, all you need to check is the is present. All right. So I already showed you if there's nothing there and I click this, it says first name is a required field. If I put in a first name that doesn't exist, I don't think I've got a Jeff in there, I get errors. If I put in a first name that does exist, there's a Gail in there. And if I click on that, it shows me Gail White Information Technology. All right. And notice, I think there's like, well, let's look. All right. So for example, there's a Brian in there. You can see that. So you should be able to do partial searches. So in other words, if I and case insensitive searches. So if I put Brian there and I search, notice it finds Brian Black. I will give you another hint right now, and you'll see me do this later. You might want to look for the array method called contains. Contains, the contains method. All right, and the same kind of thing for the last name. If I come in there, there's nobody with my last name. So it says, well, I don't know why it said that, but it did. So I might have a mistake on here. I don't know. So let's see. If I come in and look at the last names, you'll notice that there's a last name of Brown, Mary Brown. So let's see. Again, I may have an error in my code. So nope, I do have an error, but that should bring up the information for Larry Brown or Mary Brown. For the department, there's a department called Information Technology. And if I search department, it brings up the first record that's in information technology. But, there's another one. There's a web programming and there's a database programming. If I come in here and type in data, it brings me the first one that's under database programming. All right, so that's what I want you to do. Went a little longer than I thought it would here, but if you have questions, email me with the questions. That's fine. I will be online, but what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to jump over to here. I'm going to grab this. Here's the test. All right. And again, we'll go over this. We'll go over this at 10 o'clock. But what I'm going to do in about a minute is I'm going to stop the tape. All right. And let it produce. It'll take about 10 minutes. Then I will put this out on YouTube. All right. And I will send you an email and let you know that at 10 o'clock, I will be going over this entire program with you from start to finish. The only other thing I want to mention is for tomorrow, okay, we're doing this program. All right. And we're using arrays and we're using what's called data validation. In other words, we're using is present, is in 32, is within range, etc. The other thing that had been discussed in the chapter we just went over was being able to do the same thing, but use lists as opposed to arrays. And I showed you an example of that yesterday. We did the same program yesterday, 8.1 and 8.2, where in 8.1 we used arrays and in 8.2 we used lists. All right. You should also be able to use exception handling, all right, the try-catch mechanisms, either with or without the data validation stuff that's in there. All right. Okay, that's all that I have. So again, if you have questions, feel free to email me. I'm not going dark, so to speak. All right. But what I'm going to do is just be online until 10 o'clock. I'm going to stop taping now and start taping again at 10 o'clock. I'll talk to you then.